thoughtful daughter, a new trend going around on both Pinterest and TikTok, and today we're going to dive into the books of the thoughtful daughter aesthetic. Now, I don't know about you guys, but obviously I consume a lot of content on social media, and a new trend that I've seen going around on TikTok especially is the thoughtful daughter trend. And basically the idea behind this aesthetic is that it's a daughter who thinks and feels things very deeply and reads books and thinks profound thoughts about them. The video idea was created because I got recommended books for the thoughtful daughter aesthetic on TikTok, so I took a few of those books from those recommendations, and today we're going to read them and see if I can read like the thoughtful daughter aesthetic, what I think of these type of books. Usually they follow a theme that's like coming of age, thought-provoking, memoirs. I feel like more lyrical literature is what we're working with in today's video. Let's read for the thoughtful daughter. Thinking thoughts, thinking thoughts. Do you want to know what would be so funny is if I went up to my parents and I was like, am I a thoughtful daughter? I match the thoughtful daughter aesthetic, and I would like to think I do, except I talk heavily about weird conspiracy theories and backrooms over literature. Which of these books are going to make me think the most thought? I try to get the longer books read first, just because I feel like it's less intimidating that way as we go on with it. We have Rebecca and we have Lovely War. I feel like to start off this, I want to feel encouraged. I am coming off of a reading slump. I have no clue what this book is about. Should I go in blind? Should I know what I'm getting into? I don't know. I read a little bit of this and I am still confused, but I'm very intrigued. So it looks like I'm picking up Lovely War first. Okay, I'm going to go walk on the treadmill and take this book with me. Hi. It's the next day. I have been reading Lovely War. I've been going back and forth from my Kindle to the book. I got it on Kindle for a while because I was able to get it on Libby, and you can read books from your library on your Kindle. Then I brought it to the gym with me this morning, and I literally was highlighting so much stuff that I wanted to go home and read the physical copy and annotate stuff when I wanted to highlight it, because the writing in this book is beautiful, and this is a YA book, which was surprising to me because not that there's like adult themes, but it doesn't read like a young adult book. But I so far have been loving this book. There are so many different layers to the book. It's so deep rooted in history across multiple different countries. Early 1900s, like 1915 to right now, I think we're in 1918. So that's like the backdrop of the story, and you're following this love story. I think there's two different ones, but it's told from the perspective of a bunch of different Greek gods and goddesses. The story is mainly told and narrated by Aphrodite. I don't know a whole lot about Greek mythology, and that's not something that gets in the way with this book, because Greek mythology is a big part of it, but anytime there's like a new god or goddess mentioned, they tell you a little bit of the lore to like help you figure out what's going on, what they add to the story. It's not like super deep. You don't need to know Greek mythology because I know nothing, okay? It is so beautiful. I want to read you guys a few lines. He only had one chance to interact with her, only one thing he could decently say, that he loved her music, that it took him away from this place, from this night, 1 week before shipping overseas to the Western Front, where young men like him died in droves, and that she had given him this indescribable gift of escape, all the while being so sincere and fascinating. Her absorption of the music proprietary allowed him only to tell her that he enjoyed her playing, when he wanted to say so much more, and the one thing he dared hoped was that she would feel how desperately he meant it. But even just the romance within this book is so sweet, and it just grabs your heart with both hands, and it feels like it's ripping it out of my chest. It's so deeply emotional. I have not read a romance inside of a book that you can just like feel that it's like bone deep. Like, it's so deep and emotional, and you can feel everything that they're saying to each other, and you can see the moments so clear, like off of the page. Like, it feels like it's literally being like projected off of the page. I can see it in my mind, which I usually can't. I'm really loving it. I'm about this much through the book right now. I think I was like 20% through before I picked up the book, so I would say I'm like maybe 25% into. It's a pretty thick book. We're following two different storylines while we go back to some of them, like the Greek gods and goddesses talking to each other, which I feel like provides a little bit of comedic relief in between the more heavy stuff that this book is talking about, because it talks about a lot of history. Also, when we go to the point of views in the chapters in which the gods and goddesses are talking to each other, providing a little bit of comedic relief is a nice little intermission between all of the more heavy chapters. But so far I am absolutely loving it. Well, I am 54% into Lovely War, and I just went through a part that literally was so sad. Oh my god. This quote I have to read you guys. He began to cry. I am so often moved by souls whose first concern is not for their own lost years, but for the grief of their passing will cause to those they love. It's more common than you might think. The most ordinary mortal bodies are housed by spectacular souls. Going to pull myself together, I've switched back over to the Kindle because we were kind of in like, not a like slow part of the story, but it was just more like repetitive. Not a whole lot was like happening. To progress the story along, we were kind of sitting in one setting, learning backdrop, and so I went back to my Kindle because I don't know if you guys can tell, this book is like big, like as in like it's like a big book. So I'm lazy, of course, but now that we are 50% into it, I am loving it. It's so devastatingly beautiful, and it just all tugs at your heartstrings, and it would make such a good movie. Like, that's how I know that I am really liking a book, especially more like literary piece, is when I'm like, this would make such a great movie. Sorry, I just keep thinking about what I just read. It literally has made me hard to breathe for a second. Like, actually, this book is like way, not like I thought that it was going to be bad, but it's like impacted me in ways that I did not suspect it to do. That's crazy. Ugh. It is a while later. I have taken a shower and I immediately came back in to continue reading Lovely War, which I actually just finished. I want to say on my rating, at first there were a lot of times throughout this book that I was like, ooh, this is literally a 5-star read. I was so attached to the characters in this book. I cried multiple times, which shows you that I am emotionally invested. It brought so much into the story. Like, this book is rich in history, in metaphors, in lessons, in love, in friendship, in relations with everybody. It's just so good. I can't even begin to describe how good this book is. I saw this on the TikTok of the book recommendations. Obviously, that's why we're reading these books for this video. But other than that, I have never heard a single person, maybe I just haven't come across it, I have not heard a single person talk about this book. So I am in awe with how great and amazing this book was. I'm giving it a 5-star. Guys, it was just so good. It's a 5-star. Like, this is a book that I will recommend until I am blue in the face. I feel like everybody can get enjoyment out of this book. It is absolutely amazing, and I would recommend you guys all go pick this up. It is amazing. Oh god, now I don't know if any other book in this video is going to compare to this one, but to compare it to the thoughtful daughter aesthetic, I do get why this would be within the recommendations to follow this, because this is such a deeply thought-provoking book. Like I said, it is rich in history, and it makes you think about so many different things during this time period, and also just the love that's in this book, the friendship that's represented in the book, just relations with everybody, like the way that you see the world through the lens of this book. It is so amazing. I can't even. I'm gonna be thinking about this book for a long time. I cannot believe that this was a 5-star read for me. I never would have picked this up thinking it's a 5-star read, so that should also be a lesson that sometimes your 5-star reads can be right in front of your face and you would never expect it. We're back in my corner. Oh, I don't know why I put so much emphasis on the my. We have quite a few more books to get through. We have Rebecca. Is this classified as a classic? Wait on you, editing Destiny. She had the answer for you guys. So whether it is or not, I've said it multiple times. This is the book that Taylor Swift said via an interview, pretty sure it was with Apple Music, that she had read the song, and I think she literally even said the line. She had said she read this book and was like, oh, her husband just tolerates her. You know, Taylor Swift was like, I've been that. I have something lodged in my throat right now. Anyway, she said she's been in that same situation before, and it inspired Tolerate It. And Tolerate It is one of my top 5 favorite songs of all time. Not Taylor Swift songs. Top 5. That makes me even more excited to read this. Very, very excited. So let's get into this one a little bit before bed. The only monologue that's going to be going through my head as I read this is, I sit and watch you reading with your head low. Look at the size of that font. Look at the size of that font, everybody. Diaper cuddles, diaper cuddles. Tell 'em hi. Hi. It is literal, I think it's been like a full day since I last did an update for this reading vlog. I have an update for Rebecca, that being I'm about halfway through, and I've been reading it for like 3 days. That's not long at all. But I have been valiantly trying to work through this book for 3 days, and I literally refuse. I was just thinking, I was like, maybe put this one down, pick another one up. I refuse. I am at the 50% mark, and I feel like, I imagine with classics it may be a little bit harder to get into in the beginning. So for me, the other 50% of the book would go by way quicker than the first 50%. I think we're starting to see the hints of the little bit of like, not sinister, but maybe like not sinister. You can just tell that something's going on. First 50%, what are my thoughts? I don't have many, except that I feel for this young woman, I would go insane. I would go insane if the people were acting like this. The way that it's described when she like first gets to the house and how everybody is treating her, I would go insane. Also, I will say, I relate heavily. There's been so many times in this book that we have went down like a deep rabbit hole within the main character's subconscious about how she goes down these rabbit holes of hyperfixating on time and how time passes. There's a whole entire passage in which she goes on and on about how like they're all sitting out in the garden, this moment will pass, and like all of this stuff, like that type of time hyperfixation, which I have quite a lot. I actually obsess and freak out over time a lot. I spend a lot of my time freaking out over how fast time is passing, so I really relate to our main character doing that. But I mean, I'm over 50% through, like this much left of the book. Honestly though, having a good time. I can't wait to see what the second half of this does. However, I had started to feel a little discouraged with this book, so then I did what I always do naturally. I went on TikTok, because of course they have the answers for everything, right? People love this book. People in my comments too, I noticed people were commenting, they're like, I love that book, like that book is stuck with me. And I will say, this author's writing, exquisite. I have so many highlights on my Kindle. I can imagine the scene and setting so well. Like I can picture Manderley in my head and like the grounds she's walking and the characters, like, and I don't imagine things very easily, guys. I keep telling you this. If you watch my videos, you may know I have a very, very overly active sense of imagination. I can be extremely delusional. However, it's a little bit hard for me to imagine things in books sometimes. Very, very hard. But this one makes it where it's a little bit better. I am on a mission to finish this. Ooh, also, I have been reading a few passages from the unabridged journals of Sylvia Plath. I've also been doing that in between. That's what's going on for now. I'm gonna finish the rest of Rebecca. Hey guys, I need to update you guys because last night I finished Rebecca. I will tell you guys, I have not stopped thinking about this book since I picked it up and read it. When I tell you, I have just been like enamored by this book. I have thought about it multiple times. Got in the car this morning, turned on Tolerate It, and I think there's like a movie about this. I think it's kind of an older movie, I think, about this, because this book is what, from the 1930s. First classic that I have finished since I've been in high school. Picked up classics before in the past years, but I've never finished them. This one, I will say, from a beginner's perspective, is such an easy classic to get into. Where this may sound dumb of me, but I didn't even know that this was a classic until I went on TikTok and people were talking about like classics to recommend to beginners. It was so good. The writing is exquisite. I literally have so many highlights on the Kindle when I was reading it. Like, I just kept on underlining. It's such a good and well-built story, and like I told you guys in the last clip, I cannot imagine like scenery and stuff clearly, but with this book, Manderley was like its own living, breathing character. The way that it was heavily described, but in a way that didn't feel like too much. It felt like just perfectly enough. The last 50% of this book felt like I was just like falling down the rabbit hole. You're following the inner monologue of this main character, and sometimes you're just looking at her and you're just like, what is going on inside this brain, girl? Honestly, an exhilarating experience, and I stayed up to read it. I was hooked, because here's the thing about me. When I'm tired, I'm gonna go to bed. Doesn't matter if the book doesn't have me hooked, I'm going to bed. This one I stayed up to read, which I feel like says a lot about it. When it comes to a rating, I'm still going to rate classics. It just feels very weird to like put a rating on a classic, and I don't know why it's still a book at the end of the day, but I feel like because it holds a level of prestige around it, I guess. But I will say, I think I'm gonna give this a 4.5 stars. It was so good. Finished Rebecca, and we're gonna go on to the next book. Hello, new development. I actually just finished Beautiful Boy. I literally read it within one day. I listened to like 75% of it via audiobook. I would feel tears in my eyes, like today especially. I feel like we were in kind of like more midst of the story between him and his son and battling this addiction. I was literally outside, laying out, like just like laying outside. I would get tears in my eyes, and then today when I decided to like finish the last like 25% of it in the physical copy, I literally was crying. The pure poetry and the way that this author, who is the dad, this is told from the dad's point of view, was able to encapsulate the feeling and the dread, hopelessness, but also the hope and the highs and lows while trying to help his son. It was all so beautiful and just heart-wrenching at the same time. And also his writing is really, really good. I think that he was already a writer, because he said multiple times that yes, his writings had appeared in New York Times, Rolling Stones, Wired, and many other publications. And also something that I liked was he would be talking about and recounting certain things, and especially kind of more towards the beginning of finding out his son has this addiction, and he would start kind of quoting the research and talking about the facts. I also read the epilogue, which I think I read the epilogue, and then I read the like extended author's note, because I think this copy specifically is like the 10 years since he originally wrote the book. He originally wrote the article, one of the two. I think it's since he originally wrote the book. Reading that was brought to tears again. Like, I just, so many points of this book, and I feel like I know these people personally, and now I want my whole entire family and everybody I know, which is why I'm also raving about it to you guys. I want everybody to read this book. I think that this book tells the story in just such, I can't even put it into words. It's just so amazing, and it's a story that I feel like everybody would benefit from. Pick this up. Even if you don't read a whole lot of nonfiction, I would recommend picking up the audiobook for it, because it was really good. The person who narrated it was excellent. I thought that I've been recording this whole entire time, but I fear that I have not been. That's just great. A little bit of an update for you guys. First of all, can we talk about how it is literally 9 o'clock at night and it still looks daylight outside? It's my favorite part about living in the Midwest and having Midwest summers. Where my reading has been at since we finished, what was the last book that I finished for this video? I can't remember. I have been picking up and reading the unabridged journals of Sylvia Plath. I've read quite a few of them. I'm just putting this as a as an announcement for this video. I don't know how far I'll get into this because if we're being completely transparent with you guys, I am definitely in a stage of my life where I am struggling heavily mentally. So reading this, I feel very seen, but it's almost in a way where it's like, I don't know how good reading this is for my mental health, being in the state that I am right now mentally of this nature right now. So I am going to go on with reading it. I just don't know if I'm going to finish the whole entire thing in this video because even earlier I was in a very good mood to read, and then I was like, oh yeah, reading is fun, and then I picked this up and I started thinking about me when reading these quotes and my mental health and stuff that I'm struggling with. You know, I feel like reading is escapism, and there are certain things you just can't pick up when you're feeling a certain way, and this is just one of them. But I will say her writing is just so good. In other news, we're moving on with today's video, and I'm now going to pick up Looking for Alaska by John Green. Honestly, I have no clue at all what this book is about, but I feel like I'm gonna feel very nostalgic for this if I was to guess a feeling, because John Green was literally my childhood. Literally my childhood. Paper Towns and The Fault in Our Stars were two books that I continuously reread when I was in elementary school. The Fault in Our Stars specifically. You know what we don't talk about enough? The Pinterest Tumblr phase of 2013 to 2014. The okay shirt. It's a metaphor. Like, The Fault in Our Stars had everybody was talking about The Fault in Our Stars. Reading a John Green book is going to feel very nostalgic for me. And I want a snack. Like a little snack, like a little pretzel or something along that nature. Maybe I'll get a snack and we'll settle down and read. Okay, I didn't get a snack, but I am all ready for bed. Can you tell? My skin looks oily because I just put on moisturizer. About to get in this bed behind me, start reading. It's the next night. I'm now 63% into Looking for Alaska. I will say, Paper Towns was like this too, where I feel like the story take an unexpected turn. Even though I did kind of feel a little bit something would happen, like, I don't know, the story just felt like you're surrounding this one thing and it kind of feels like the nucleus of everything and everything else is happening around this one thing. I just kind of was like, felt like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I just didn't know exactly what, but I kind of guessed. Is it very annoying to listen to somebody say this about a book and you haven't read it and you're just like, girl, what are you talking about? I'm very conflicted on my feelings for this book because I have had lines where I've underlined everything, and honestly, I started at page 30 like maybe an hour ago, like more than an hour ago. It hasn't been 2 hours, but I've read this much and we're 60% through the book. Obviously the writing is good because I do think from what I can remember and even just reading this book that John Green does have good writing. And this was his debut novel, by the way. That's kind of crazy. But there's something about being in our main character's mind that just feels a little gross to me sometimes. I don't know. Also, this book is young adult, and some of the things that are just distinctly talked about in the book was very surprising for me. Anyway, I just don't know how I feel about it. I think for me, it's all about when you are in the main character's perspective of the guy. It just feels like gross to me a little bit. You know, I feel like he adds nothing to the story, but he's a good lens to look through for the other characters that I find 100 times more interesting than him. But it's just very interesting because for some reason this writing and this style of book is super nostalgic for me. Also, this was written in 2005, I think, or published in 2005. It kind of feels like a time capsule in a way. I don't know, everything just feels so different in this book, but I don't know how much I like it. Well, I just finished this book and I'm even more conflicted than when I started. I do really like the ending line of this book. Oh, I just love this line. Anyway, my thoughts right now on the book. Really like that we discuss this idea of the labyrinth. Stuck in the labyrinth.
Labyrinth.
Which is a maze. Definition says a complicated, irregular network of passages or paths in which it is difficult to find one's way. A maze. We're talking about this idea because it's like in a book and it's a very big thing throughout the whole entirety of this one, and we kind of keep coming back to it. I really liked how that came together at the end in saying that John Green, I feel, is a very, very good writer, and I feel like he knows when he's articulating a story. I feel like he just has it down, and this book is so much wrapped in one, and I can definitely see that and appreciate that and see where things are coming from. Like, even though I'm not gonna rate this right now, I kind of feel a rating like in my chest. I kind of feel a rating. My heart is what I'm trying to say, but I don't want to say it right now. We'll save it for our little wrap up that we always do at the end. Hello guys, you've reached the end of today's video where we read all of these books. Well, some of them. So let's see what I think of it. Really, at the end of the day, I think that this is just a fun thing. I feel like there are so many different aesthetics all over Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and I just find this one very fun because it feels like it's very book related. I will say that I had a really great reading week with all of these books because they were all rated very, very highly. So let's do a little wrap up and get into them in my final closing thought. First of all, this one that I'm holding, I didn't finish the unabridged journals of Sylvia Plath. I already said in the clip, but in case you missed it, I just feel like I'm not in the mental mindset for this book right now. I feel like this is definitely something that I would like to revisit when myself, as I am in a better mindset where I can read a book like this. I just don't think that I'm there right now. Starting from the beginning of this video, I read Lovely War, and as we all saw, I gave this book a 5-star. I never would have thought, honestly, when looking at this book, that it was going to be a 5-star, and that should tell you, no matter what, when you're picking up a book, there is literally any possibility of what it could do for you. I mean, I feel like we all already know that, but I feel like I was looking at this book, and it's just not something that I would look at and I would think is 5-star. And so it kind of also opens my book tastes a little bit because this isn't something that I would necessarily reach for all of the time. This is a young adult historical fiction, and I just don't think that that specific genre is something that I reach for. But this was a literal 5-star read. I have not stopped thinking about this book. One, it is so well written. Two, the love stories in this book are so deeply emotional, and that is my absolute favorite type of romance to read. You just feel your heart squeeze for these characters, and you just are so wrapped up in the story, and there's so much history talked about. Obviously, it's a historical fiction, but also the way that the story was told was such a unique take on it, and I really, really liked it, how it was told from these Greek gods' point of view, and that just added a whole entire other element to the story that I just really, really loved. All in all, please read Lovely War. This was a unexpected 5-star read for me, and it is beautiful. Next up, I picked up Beautiful Boy, and this is also a book that deeply impacted me emotionally. I absolutely love it. However, if you're new here, I do not rate nonfiction. I don't give it a rating because I just kind of think it's a little unfair for me to read somebody's memoir and then be like, 5-star, you know what I mean? I just don't rate it. This story I was so attached to, and I had watched Beautiful Boy many times before, so I already was familiar with the story, but not as intimate as we get into the book. Obviously, the book has a lot more detail and explanation than the movie does, but the movie is still a masterpiece within itself. The book is just 100 times better, as always. So deeply emotional, and you're listening to this, you just feel off of the page what David Sheff is trying to get across, and there's also so much information interwoven between the story that he's telling of living through his son's addiction, and it's just a story that is just gripping. Next, this one was a little challenging for me, but not going into this knowing that it was a classic was definitely something that I was like, oh wow, I did not know that this was a classic. So I felt very accomplished after reading it, but it was very rewarding. No matter how hard it was like for me to first get into it, it was very rewarding by the end. Obviously, Rebecca, you guys watched the video. I ended up giving this book a 4.5 stars. I have not stopped thinking about this book since I read it. I would say from 40% on, I was just glued to the page. Like, I literally stayed up to finish it. I was sitting in bed, could not put the book down, and it felt like a very, almost like, you know, the black and white films. There's a specific one that I'm thinking of, and from 40% on, it made me feel the same way that I did when I watched that movie a few months ago, and I really, really liked that feeling of like falling down the rabbit hole almost. You're like, what is happening? Like, the story just feels like it's unraveling in a genius way. Also, the atmosphere in this book, this is definitely one of the most atmospheric reads that I have ever read, and bonus points since Taylor Swift wrote Tolerate It, inspired by the song. And then finally, I read Looking for Alaska by John Green, and I ended up settling on a 3-star rating for this book because I would definitely recommend this book, and I see how this book could be a lot of people's favorite books. It talks about mental health, friendships, being a teenager, and how this all plays in together. So many different themes wrapped all up in one story, and it's fairly short, so you can get through it pretty quickly. The thing is though, I just didn't love it that much. I just think that that's where this falls, is that I could definitely recommend it and see people absolutely loving it, and this being such an impactful story. For me, it just fell a little flat. I already stated in literally like the last clip that I just did not enjoy the point of view that we were in. A few things about this book that I just personally didn't like. All in all, reading for the thoughtful daughter trend was super fun, and I found some new really good books. Reading these books for this trend specifically did bring me one of my best reading months in the term of like rating wise. I feel like the whole entire thing behind the thoughtful daughter are just reading books that you have to think so deeply about and get the messaging out of them, and they don't leave your mind. And you know, I always relate to the TikToks that you see where it's like, road trips are easy when you're the daughter who's never gotten over anything. And that is literally me. I feel like I already match the thoughtful daughter aesthetic, so I feel like these books being rated highly just really set it in stone for me. With that being said, that's the end of today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys did, you guys know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff you guys know how to do. And you guys comment down below if you've read any of these books, or if you want to try the thoughtful daughter trend and all of that good stuff, and I will see you guys when I see ya. Peace!